Spring practice is wrapped, and on the horizon is Virginia Tech and the 2024 season. Expectations are growing.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. In today's episode, we discuss how Vandy's expectations are on the rise, and we explore the possibilities of best case scenario for 2024, and of course, worst case scenario, which could possibly spell the end of Clark Lee, maybe. We'll discuss. For Vandy baseball, it's time to find a way to score runs and get batters out. The task gets tougher this weekend in Athens. How can Vandy find its groove? How can they get their groove back? Kind of like Stella. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's rewind it. Back when I started, I think it was December 11th. I just looked it up. We had 16,000 all-time views, by the way. Thank you for making that happen, by the way. But anyway, back to my original point. When I started, expectations were at all-time low. They were on the edge, on the brink of firing Clark Lee. I remember being in discussions with Locked On and getting this thing started and waiting for the green light and doing all my meetings and getting all my graphics together and just going through the onboarding process with Locked On, which was about a 2-week process. And in that 2-week process, I went from thinking, am I going to start day one in the middle of a coaching search or at the beginning of a coaching search? Like, am I going to get this lucky here with the amount of coverage? Not lucky that Vandy's going to be finding a new coach. Don't take that the wrong way. But I went from that, right? So the expectations were all the time low. They were thinking, the expectations were survive 2024 and let's get a real coach in here. That was the expectation back in December. I think Clark Lee heard the noise. I think Clark Lee finally woke up. He started overhauling his staff over the course of my show. I watched it unfold all throughout my show because normally I probably wouldn't have paid attention as much, but it provided I got a front row seat to all of that. So he started overhauling new strength staff, new coordinators, getting more active in NIL, hitting the portal, basically finding an identity that he wants on offense and going and grabbing that entire identity from Jerry Kill to Tim Beck to the running backs coach to everything, to quarterback. It coined the phrase Aggie doors, right? So it morphed all into that. Successful spring practice, overhaul. Now expectations are on the rise, okay? And they're growing. And so I think best case scenario, after spring practice, after what I've witnessed from the overhaul, after what I've seen from the newcomers in the portal, after everything that I've seen unfold, I still maintain, I've predicted it, and I still maintain that Vandy's going bowling. 6-6 is, I think, best case scenario for this schedule and this team where it's currently sitting. I think 6-6 is best case scenario, which is amazing. And here's why. So first of all, just the culture shift. Okay. The shift in culture going from a head coach that has been sitting at 30,000 feet and kind of checked out, or it seems like he's been kind of checked out, to now where you can just tell by the tone of his voice, you can tell when he's doing interviews, you watch him, you watch the team play, you just observe, and you see a Clark Lee that you've probably never seen before. One that's actually appears engaged. Not saying he's never been engaged, but I think somewhere along the line, he may have gotten disillusioned in the fact that okay, I can be this 30,000 foot view coach, CEO coach, and what he ended up doing was getting detached. And so now by inserting himself as the defensive coordinator, now he is more locked in, he's more focused, he's more on the ground, he's got more hands-on approach, which I think fits his style. Okay, I think that's what's good. I think he's going to be at his best now because he's not trying to act like a CEO and worrying about glad-handing everybody and just worrying about, all the CEO stuff. He's kind of getting down into the details again, and he's finally starting to kind of realize, all right, this is my style. This is where I feel comfortable. He needed to get knocked on his butt, and that he did. He needed to find people to give him solid advice that he could trust, that had his best interest in mind. He did that. He hired Jerry Kill. That might be the best hire he made. No offense to the other guys, but Jerry Kill is basically the other head coach. He is the guy that is, if you have him in your ear, you're in good shape. Jerry Kill is very, very successful. The only reason he hasn't officially been very successful is for health reasons. He's had to step down in every head coaching role he's had because of seizures and health reasons. And it's a shame because I think he would have won big at Minnesota and parlayed that into a Big Ten job probably, and or a big ACC job, or maybe cracked himself into the SEC somewhere. He would have gotten a really, really big job. And so he's a really good hire because he is helping overhaul the offense. He's kind of there to allow Clark Lee to turn a lot of his attention over to the defense, to where he doesn't have to be sitting in the tower high above watching everything and trying to control everything that seems to be out of his reach. He's getting some great advice now, I think, too, on things that he can do for program building. He overhauled his strength staff, so they're doing stuff in strength and conditioning that's going to make them more durable. It's going to make them perform better, and they're investing in those positions. They're investing in nutrition positions. They're investing in mental health positions. They're investing in all kind of sports science and strength and conditioning, and they're building that from the ground up. They've got some new facilities coming along. They're finally renovating the stadium and going to make that into a really nice place to play. So that's happening. They're starting to be way more aggressive in the portal, more aggressive than they've ever been, to replace guys that have left. And I think they're finally realizing that they can't play like the other people play. They have to be, I said this last night, they have to be puzzle oriented, right? They have to build those puzzle pieces. They have to realize, Vandy has to realize, Clark Lee has to realize, this whole staff has to realize one thing, that just like baseball, if you try to play like the Yankees in every aspect of the game, you're not going to win. You're going to get crushed because you're trying to play something that you're trying to be something you're not. It's like the movie Cool Runnings, which I guarantee you logged on today and didn't think you were going to get a Cool Runnings reference, but here you go. And here we are. It's like the Jamaicans trying to be the Swiss team. They're not Swiss. They have to be the best version of themselves. They have to find their identity. And I think that's what Vandy's doing. Vandy's identity defensively is build a really elite secondary and let it trickle down to building a front seven that's going to be active, aggressive, and kind of like a no-name defense type scenario. Whereas all your elite guys are going to be on the back end, to where now you're going to get really good coverage guys. So if you build really good corners and you build a really good secondary, it allows you to get more creative with stunts and pressures, so that now you don't have to worry about having that superstar edge rusher. You can kind of do it in the aggregate by being able to get creative with your pressures because you have a good back end in your secondary. He's building that. Okay. He's building an identity. He's building a winning culture. Everything trickles down to there. everything that they've done, it's a puzzle. And Kurt Page and I talked about this. It's a puzzle. Fitting pieces in the puzzle. In order to fit pieces in the puzzle that you need to fit pieces into, you have to realize that there is a puzzle. And I'm not so sure that there's been years that I'm not so sure they knew the puzzle was sitting right there in their face. They just go out and get these random pieces and wonder why they don't fit. It's a puzzle. And they, like I said, they can't play Georgia football because Georgia football can go out and recruit the top 100, just bring the top 100 in to play defense and out-talent you in a lot of ways and mask some of the deficiencies they may have in scheme, which they have elite scheme too. So don't get me wrong on that. That's a clinic on recruiting and coaching. It's Nick Saban like, but they just can't. Vandy can't do that because they're not getting those players, right? And even those players have some deficiencies that I think sometimes come out with being just overly reliant on talent and I think sometimes they get in over their heads. If you watch Georgia, I think sometimes they get themselves in trouble with some of the pressures because they feel like they have a lot of talent, and sometimes they forget that sometimes this talent isn't always communicating very well. And so I think it's very underrated to have an identity and play really, really well within that identity. So that's how this thing can go right. The puzzle pieces fit each game. Like each game you get the new puzzle, right? And you got to find a way to make those pieces fit. And at 2-10, they didn't do that a whole lot. And against Hawaii, it took them a long time. Against Alcorn State, I imagine they're going to put that puzzle together real quick, right? But they've got to figure out how that puzzle works each week. And they've got to figure out their pieces and where they fit together. And I think they're doing that. And I think they finally kind of gotten process driven. I think they finally got to a point where, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need to do it. These are the kind of players we need to do it. We don't need you to be a superstar. We need you to star in your role. It's like a film set. This film is going to be great because of this role and this role and this role working together, right? In the aggregate, the cast, it's an ensemble cast type movie. Like Reservoir Dogs. Everyone had their part. There you go. So, best case scenario, I think it's coming together. They're working on fitting the pieces together offensively. That will come, right? There are concerns. There are things that could happen. Vegas has set the over-under at 2.5. I think even worst case scenario, they still hit the over on that. But could they go 3-9? It is very possible to see the schedule is tough, but we'll talk about that next. All right. This episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. You heard it here. All right. I have to pause. This is what's going to happen. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. Okay. And so you're saying you've already talked about that. You talked about that. Oh, that's all you talk about. Monopoly Go. All right. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. So like unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Who doesn't like big prizes? Cool new playing pieces to travel boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting. And taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. So all that good stuff. Monopoly Go feels like it's new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or the robot pachinko game machine. I keep wanting to say Plinko there, but it's not Plinko. That would be awesome if it was. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Yep. So there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, welcome back. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN? And are you tired of all of that shouting? Do you have to turn TV down? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming all 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we talked best case scenario. Okay, well, I got to flip that over, and we got a few minutes in the segment. So we got to go, and there is a worst case scenario. And normally the truth lies kind of in between. So hopefully it's not the case here. But worst case scenario, I think, for this team is 3-9. And I think there's obviously there's a chance to go. If you really want to get technical with it, they could go 0-12. But, I think with the schedule they got laid out, I think 3-9 is a real possibility. I think 6-6 is a real possibility. I'm predicting the 6-6. And my personal worst case scenario is 5-7. But we have to discuss the concerns that I think if all these concerns prove to be true, then 3-9, you're staring 3-9 right in the face, and you're looking possibly at the end of Clark Lee. And I think with all that he's built, I think that would be a shame to go 3-9 and get moved on from. So, but here are the concerns. Okay, concerns. A, tough schedule. Okay, the SEC is a tough league in and of itself. So just inherently, you're getting a tough schedule. But you open up with Virginia Tech, which they return a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it's still a coin flip because they're Virginia Tech and they haven't been really good lately. They haven't been good at all too much lately, but they got a lot of guys coming back and they're a talented team. You're going to get Ball State, Alcorn, and Georgia State. I think those are your three wins, regardless of what happens. But you get Alabama at home, which Alabama's still Alabama. You get Tennessee, LSU, and Texas. Those are four really, really hard games, and I think those are losses. You get South Carolina, Kentucky, Auburn, and those are tough games as well. So, I think in a world where I think if you get some bad momentum, I think if you get the doors blown off of you in the first game, the confidence could plummet. And I think if things go into the tank, it could get really bad for you. But the concerns are if the offensive line sustains a couple of injuries, or if you're ineffective at doing your identity, if Pavia somehow gets hurt or underperforms, I think that's a possibility that would lend itself to hitting worst case scenario. I think if you end up having a defensive line that's ineffective and pressuring quarterbacks, where you're forcing your secondary to play coverage extremely long amount of times, I think you could run into some trouble. And these are all valid concerns, like the offensive line not holding up, not being able to get movement in the run game, not being able to protect Pavia, having to go to Berlowitz, having to go down the depth chart at quarterback, right? I think that if you are in that scenario, 3-9 is a distinct possibility. I worry about some of those things, like this offense not gelling in time and getting off to a bad start momentum-wise can be very, very concerning. The fact that you have a ton of new faces, I think anytime you have a ton of new faces, anytime you have those scenarios, you get into a situation to where these guys can't really communicate well with each other, and oftentimes that leads to busts. Okay, and if you're getting a bunch of busts, well, you're giving up a lot of points. And it's something that can derail a season in a heartbeat, right? And so that's something that if that concern comes true, you're going to find yourself staring up at the wrong end of a beatdown every other week when you get to the conference schedule. So it's something that I don't think will happen. I think the guys they got are good veteran guys that know how to communicate. So I don't think you're going to hit rock bottom. I don't think unless you just get a complete – I think worst case scenario – I'm going to predict worst case scenario if and only if there's a rash of injuries, a major rash of injuries where you're like starting walk-ons on the offensive line type situation. So I think that's where you lie, worst case scenario. And I'm going to yawn on that, okay? Because I'm tired of that one. Okay. So just had to discuss it, just had to get those concerns out there as possibility. I'm still maintaining my prediction of 6-6. Okay. I want you to hold me to that. I still think we're there. Our defense is cooking. Our offense is quickly catching up. Our offense has made some strides throughout the spring, and quarterback one is not even on campus yet. So there you go. But a team that could use a confidence boost is the Vandyboys. Okay, they had an extra innings win against Tennessee Tech last night. How does that affect them? How can they get their groove back? They travel to Athens this weekend. What can they do to get back on track? We'll talk about that next. All right. Game time. Have you ever struggled buying tickets? Are you excited about the NBA playoffs? Well, if you thought it would be cool to attend the game, it would be. You go to a Timberwolves game, go see Anthony Edwards, you're in for a treat. But Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. So if you were to say, Corey, what's your favorite part about Game Time? Well, when you look up on Game Time and you find all these games, what I really like is the views from the seat, okay? I really dig that. I really enjoy that. And so I am a big fan of what that brings to the table. They have also the all-in pricing, so you know what you're getting right away. And you know that whatever price you see is whatever price you're going to get. So I'm in favor of that right now. So right now I'm looking up on the app right now. They've got a really good deal on Predators Game 6 tickets. Okay. So like what I love about this is like, here's the flash deals. Okay. Like if you look at the app, this is the app. This is what you'll see, right? This is a view from your seat, row 33, row Q. Okay. This is what I love about Game Time is the panoramic seats from your view. All right. They have last minute deals as well. You can't beat any of that. So what you need to do is take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And the reason I looked up NHL tickets is because I live in Nashville and we don't have an NBA team or an NBA team that's in the playoffs for that matter. So Game Time, do it. All right, welcome back. Third and final segment. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Thank you to the everydayers for making everything possible. Without you, couldn't do it. Join the show on social media at Locked On Vandy, X and IG. I'm getting close to 300 subscribers. Keep pushing that number this way. Let's get to 500,000 by football season, and then football season we can crank out another 500. So let's get to 1,000 by the end of football season. But anyway, Locked on Vandy, man. Thank you to the everydayers for making all this possible. Make sure you go to Locked on SEC as well. Thank you for supporting this and supporting the Locked on Podcast Network. So we talked football, expectations, worst case scenario, best case scenario, why I think we're going bowling. But Vandyboys need to get their groove, man. Talking baseball. They had a very concerning extra innings game against Tennessee Tech that required a walk-off hit by pitch to win that game. And so it's concerning because it just seemed like those last two games against Mississippi State kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit. It kind of – I just feel like the adjective to describe this team is just demoralized almost. Like it's a team that's just struggling to find what they're good at. It's like at the beginning of the season, oh, we're good at pitching. We're just going to pitch you to death, right? And in that Houston Classic where I thought they would get exposed a little bit, they didn't. They pitched their way through. They had power when they needed it. But it's not consistent is the problem. Okay, that is they're good at pitching and they can hit for power, but – and it's the team that has the smallest sentence after that word but. Because every team has they're good at this, but, and then their fatal flaw, right? Vandy's is long and complicated, which I think can take a lot of mojo out of you. And so like when you're not consistent with your power outputs, it puts your pitchers in a bad position because now those guys start pressing a little bit and they feel like they have to go out and win the game every time they take the mound, every pitch while they're on the mound. They feel like they have to throw out pitches. And that you end up when you're pressing as a pitcher, I know because I've done it before, not at the college level, thankfully for whoever would have signed me, but not at the college level. But anytime I pitched from high school down, if I pressed and I worried about trying to overcompensate for a team that I know was struggling at the plate, I would often overthrow. And when I overthrow, that ball is going in one of two places, in the dirt or up in the zone, either missing up in the zone or grooving one that gets absolutely cremated. I threw a pitch in this one tournament when I was 14 years old. Okay, that was the height of my pitching career. I was the best that I've ever been pitching wise. When I was in a groove, I was in a groove, man. I could get you out. I could get batters out. I had this little cut fastball that was really pretty good. And then I had my circle change, and I had a pretty good two-seam fastball that moved a little bit. And so I was kind of grooving a little bit. But when I would press, I would leave pitches up, and I think it was 2 men on. We get to their cleanup hitter. I groove him a letter high fastball, and I swear to God, I'm not sure the ball has landed yet. That thing went into the freaking stratosphere. It went over the concession stand pavilion at the ballpark we were playing at. And for that to do that was for it to hit the downside of the roof on the side you couldn't see. That was impressive. It was an impressive shot. It was probably 420 feet for a 14-year-old. It's pretty daggum good, even with aluminum bat. But the fact of the matter is I pressed and I left the ball up in the zone, and he just annihilated it. And that's what these Vandy pitchers are doing. They are leaving things up in the zone. They're delivering hittable pitches. And they're delivering drivable pitches. And so I think the first thing this team needs to do, and the reason why they swept LSU, the reason why they took 2 out of 3 from Florida, the reason why they won game 1 against Mississippi State, I think is every once in a while they figure out that, hey, we're actually not bad at this thing called baseball. And so every once in a while they have a good performance at the plate, which alleviates the pressure on their pitching staff, which then in turn alleviates pressure at the plate. So it all kind of works hand in hand. They have to be intentional about that. I think that's the fix. No matter what the lineup combination is, they have to be intentional about their mindset and how they approach plate appearances, how they approach batters on the pitching mound, how they approach defensive situations, all the above. How Tim Corbin approaches how he approaches writing the lineup. So it's all a mindset thing, right? It's all a confidence thing. Like they have to go up there and say, I'm just going to my goal. I don't care about anything else. I'm just going to hit this baseball as hard as I can, but not like swinging out of my shoes type part. Not like trying to take it 475,000 feet over Memorial Gym, but I just want to hit this ball hard somewhere. And I want to take this pitch. Like I got to have an approach. I want to take this pitcher deep into account, and I want to drive this baseball and get on base. And hitting for power is not necessarily meaning launching home runs. It just means driving the baseball where there's no defenders. And so if Vanderbilt can do that consistently and make it difficult to get them out, they will have a much better time. And they can't do that without the proper mindset. They have to be intentional. They're not good enough to just go up there. They have to have a plan. They have to have a detailed plan. They have to be intentional. Otherwise, they can't derive any confidence out of that. And some teams have to do that. And Vandy's one of those teams. Some teams don't. Vandy's not fortunate in that regard right now. So anyway, but that's going to do it for us here today. So we hope you have a great Thursday. Vandy boys are traveling to Athens this weekend to take on Georgia. That'll be fun. That'll be a cool matchup. Charlie Condon is an absolute alien for Georgia, so that'll be a tough go, but they have to do it on the road. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that series goes for the Vandyboys. So that being said, this is the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your everyday listen. Hope you keep coming back and tell a friend at Locked On Vandy on social media. Find us wherever you find your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And until tomorrow, we'll send you off into the weekend. Anchor down and make sure you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow, and we'll be back better than ever, of course. Later. Peace.